That's my... Whoa. Is that what I'm going to have to deal with like the whole way along?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on the worst quiz show ever. Welcome to episode 4 of Keeping on Track. I am Bradley Williams.
I always hesitate. I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce myself because a couple of times you introduced me, and then I
know, but it's because you never introduce yourself. I do it for you, but this time I'm going to let you do it. Ready?
Oh.
Welcome to Keeping on Track, episode 4. I'm Bradley Williams.
And I'm Adam Heath.
That was beautiful. That was lovely. This is the podcast where we discuss various business models, questions, ethics, whatever, I don't know, stuff relating to businesses, but we view it through the lens of film because that is the medium that Adam and I are most comfortable and involved with, and the thing that we enjoy talking about the most.
I'll just say, I don't know if on these podcast platforms like iTunes or Apple Music, whatever it's called, and Spotify, I don't know if you have to put a little description of the podcast, but that description just gave should be the description, because it was quite amusing listening to you try and define what this podcast is about, and you pretty quickly realise
I've got no idea.
It's to do with business. It's
got something to do with businesses and things.
I think we're still figuring out what the show is, right? Are we allowed that great? Like 10 episodes maybe, till we have to really know exactly what this is about, maybe?
I'd argue that we're never going to know. I think we're just going to chop and change whenever we want. We know it's about businesses and we know it's about films.
There you go. Good enough for me.
And that's it. That's all you're getting. And today's episode is about innovation, is about thinking outside the box and trying to do things differently, and how we integrate that into our standard practices. And to do that, we thought that we would practice what we preach. So although we're only 4 episodes in, we're changing up the format slightly today. And it may not be the most ingenious thing you've ever heard in your life, but hopefully it will feel different to other episodes, or ever so slightly different. But it's our way of honouring the topic at hand. And to help us along the way, we're gonna look at a film as usual. And this week we're gonna look at Baz Luhrmann's interpretation of Romeo and Juliet. Now, if you're not familiar with the plot of Romeo and Juliet, or you've never seen the film, then I welcome you from under the rock that you've been living within for the last 20 plus years. And the movie itself is a famous interpretation of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. I mean, I don't know what more there is to say. It's about 2 star-crossed lovers from rivaling families, the Capulets and the Montagues, and in spite of their family differences, in spite of the warring societies that they're a part of, they find each other and they fall in love. And that's the kind of basis for the story and for the film. Obviously, if you need it, there's a spoiler warning for this episode. So if you haven't seen the film, or you're not familiar with the play of Romeo and Juliet,
they both die.
They both die at the end. There's a spoiler alert. So
I mean, I think the only way you can have avoided the story of Romeo and Juliet is by not going to school, because I feel like it's such a inherent part of education, at least in the UK. You know, you'd have come across that story in some form. Some kind of study would have been done on it for almost everybody, I would have thought.
I would say so, which is why it makes this an interesting case study for innovation, because it is such a well-worn narrative. It is such a widely known and treasured story, and something that people are extremely comfortable with and confident in talking about. And so I think that's why Baz Luhrmann, I mean, he called it William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and I'll tell you why he did that in a little while.
I think it's really interesting that you talk about Baz Luhrmann's interpretation, because that's a term that we're very familiar with in theatre. You'll see an interpretation of a story. Not so much in film. Not often do you hear of an adaptation of a book and someone calls it an interpretation. But
Yeah,
funny enough, you saying that it's exactly the right term. This is Baz Luhrmann's interpretation of that
it
material.
is. Yeah, and that is actually. Do you want to define the difference between, at risk of getting into a Jay and Silent Bob-esque rant about remakes and sequels and prequels and adaptations? Do you want to try and define the difference between an adaptation and an interpretation?
Yeah, let's do it.
Go on then.
You go first.
No, go on. You go first. I've spoken too much.
Adaptation and interpretation. I guess just the kind of the nature of the words. An adaptation to me is moving something from one medium to another. It's kind of helping that transition. So you're adapting material from one form to another, but it is a transplant almost. An interpretation is often a reimagining of an idea. It is a unique individual kind of perspective, twist. I think of all films, perhaps this is one of the better examples. You couldn't help but say that this is Baz Luhrmann's interpretation. It's not an adaptation because it's not any way taking that story and moving it from one form to another. It is a reimagining. It's a completely unique kind of perspective on the material.
Definitely. And which brings me quite nicely to why he called it, in the face of that, why he still maintained in calling it William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Now this is according to Baz himself, and he said that he felt that Shakespeare must have been the ultimate showman, and that during the time when he was writing plays and putting on plays, he was amongst prostitutes, gamblers, and all sorts of things. And so the people of the time, the poor and the wealthy alike, had other forms of, dare we say, entertainment. And much cheaper entertainment and maybe more immediately accessible entertainment. And so he felt that, Baz Luhrmann felt that in order for Shakespeare to gain people's favour and pull people out of the streets and into the theatres, he would have been a very showman-esque individual. And so he feels that if Shakespeare were alive at that period, 1996, making films, that this is the way he feels Shakespeare would have treated the material in order to make something extra unique, something very vibrant, and something that would grab people's attentions. So he's called it that to honour that. Maybe, would you call it a mission statement? That's his kind of his MO for the way he's made the film and how he's made the film. So that's why it's called William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, not Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which may or may not fall into the realms of pompous, but I think that it's, that's his belief, and that's the way he treated the film. So there's a bit of a trivia bomb for you there. You can keep that one, Adam.
And it makes sense, because what he's done ultimately is kind of, and I might regret saying this, but I think he's respected the source material, although he's imagined it in a different way. He's been faithful to the kind of content, to the themes, the kind of energy, if you like. But as you said, with a kind of modern twist. Now I think about it, that was my first introduction to Romeo and Juliet, actually, because we studied the film at school. We didn't read, we didn't talk about it as a piece of literature. We watched the film. I think it was in English literature, probably, or English language class.
Okay.
And so that, now I think about it, that's the only way I was introduced to Romeo and Juliet, as a child. And it's unique. I think unique, at least for me. I've never seen another film like it, in so much as it's a modern interpretation of that classic story, but using language from the original story. So you kind of, I can't think of another example where I've seen that before.
I would hazard a guess to say that it's probably one of the more extreme versions of the story in terms of the visuals and the tone and everything. But I think a lot of people, especially people of our generation, got early exposure to Shakespeare through this medium, which you could either argue is a wonderful gateway drug to get people hooked on it,
Hooked
or
on Shakespeare?
hooked on Shakespeare, yeah, hooked on Shakespeare, or maybe damaging because that would either build expectations that would then maybe be shattered, or potentially put you off because you think, oh, this isn't me. And I remember I saw the film when it came out, and I absolutely hated it with a passion. I just thought it was absolute dross. I just couldn't click with it, and it was only about, I would say, about 8-9 years ago that I actually rediscovered the film, because my wife loves it, and she's said to me, "Oh, would you watch it with me?" I was like, "Oh, I hate that film. I've never liked it." But I sat down and I watched it 8 or 9 years ago, and it was like a different experience altogether. And I thought, what the hell? Like, why did I not like this in the first place? What was it about this that turned me off? But since then, I've absolutely loved it. I've probably watched it about 8 or 9 times since then. But yeah, I mean, just did a complete 180 on it. So yeah, it's interesting because it is, I guess you might, for lack of a better analogy, call it Marmite. It is something that I think people love or they hate. I don't think you can be indifferent to this film. Would you agree?
Yes. I think there's lots of films you could say that about. I think for me, it's the clash in this film is the kind of challenging thing for folks. It's that modern setting, modern visual, with what is recognisably Shakespeare's language and words, kind of Old English. And that's a real challenge for people. It's a bit like when some folks perhaps feel that they're not interested in black and white movies or old movies, classic cinema. And that pretty much enough of a reason to not watch something is that it's black and white and made in the 30s or 40s. And this feels similar, because folks could listen to the soundtrack and say, oh, that's not my kind of film. The way, I can tell the language, the dialogue's not my kind of dialogue. But actually the visual is entirely in keeping with something they would watch, in contemporary cinema. So I think it's a really challenging film because it doesn't fit neatly into kind of one bucket or the other. It's kind of a hybrid movie.
Yeah, and so I guess let's tie some of this back in then to the ideas of innovation and thinking outside the box. And you said, mentioned the word hybrid, and for me, I think that is one of the things of when you're trying to innovate, when you're trying to do things in a new and refreshing way. I think you should define your new vision and be bold, not sort of have an idea or think you can do this or try that or whatever. Like, define what you want to do. Have a really clear idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve. Because I think that a film like this, it feels like chaos, and it feels like a hodgepodge and a mix of so many different things, but every one of those things is a conscious choice that otherwise none of it would have any continuity. So although it's new, although it's different, although it's original, it still has to make sense. And so it's very clear from watching this version of Romeo and Juliet that there's a fusion of high fashion, of Hispanic iconography and style. There's certain elements of gay culture on show. There's references to contemporary society, particularly obviously at the 90s at this point, with the soundtrack. So you've got bands like 1 Inch Punch and Garbage and the Cardigans, and I mean obviously Radiohead, who have got a couple of songs in here. So there's references to that. There's obviously elements of punk on show. There's even like the S&M scene. There's crime drama tropes. There's a kind of carnivalesque flamboyancy to it. There's also plays on social ethics, and so all of these things, they're all in there, and they're all got their own distinct place and time and flavour and moments to shine. But they're there on purpose. It's not just he sort of looked at something and said, you know what this really needs? This needs me to just chuck in, I don't know, let's just chuck in some Latin culture here. That will do. I think there was very conscious effort to do that. And so that for me is a real indicator of how, defining that new vision and being bold is integral.
that couldn't be more topical, given a couple of projects that we're working on at the moment. Right, my brain is now lost to a week or so back, having meetings about a project that is being reimagined, if you like, or reinterpreted, and actually it is a recycling of the exact old material that already existed. There's nothing innovative about it. It's redoing for the sake of redoing. And we took a bit of time perhaps to kind of really figure out what we weren't feeling about that project, and that was essentially it. There isn't anything new to say, nor is there a new delivery mechanism. There's not a new kind of ideology about how we present the information. It's just a repackage, and that is rarely that engaging, to be honest. A repackage of the same information.
Yeah, well, and it is. I mean, there is an argument to be had, right? So you could suggest that maybe when it comes to repackaging, or not all innovation. I feel not all innovation means the replacement of current ideas and ideologies, right? You can find a mixture of the two. So in the film, one of the scenes that sticks out to me as the most Shakespearean. So you've got this movie. You've got so let's do a direct comparison between the two. So the opening scene of the film is an absolute tour de force of cinematic techniques. Right? There's it personifies the unease and of the environment. It establishes the new form of the storytelling. So the kind of the sped up frame rates, the strange camera angles and the framing that are used. There's almost kind of comic Looney Tune-esque sound effects and sound design at certain points. You've got Jamie Kennedy's character. I can't think of the name of the character now, but Samson. So there's a bit when he's hiding and he's getting bashed in the head with his bag, and he growls at the woman. Then he stands up and he fires his gun over and over and over again, and you get this cutaway of this sign just going pew pew and spinning round and round. The whole thing is like ridiculous. It's like a cartoon western, like Wile E. Coyote or something. But you can't watch that and not go, I don't know what I'm watching here. So it very, very quickly establishes that this is a very different version of Shakespeare, but also wants to have its cake and eat it, because the way it presents itself, even the idea of the classical cast list at the beginning, like you would get in a play text, it does that at the beginning. It sort of says Ted Montague, Romeo's father, and all, and it kind of shows you all the different characters, some of the different characters up front and things like that. And then it also felt like it was honouring some very other the language and things like that. Obviously they're heavy doses of the Shakespearean side of it, but you would look at that and you go, this isn't Romeo and Juliet the way I recognise it. Then you jump forward like an hour or so, and the scene where Mercutio is killed by Tybalt feels extremely Shakespearean. So you've got the sky, this kind of Tempest-esque sky. It's got a magical, mystical quality to it. A plague on on both your houses, and the way that all plays out. And the whole thing it's very classical, the way it's shot. I can't remember if there's even any music at that point. There may be a little bit. I can't remember, but the whole thing feels like literally very Shakespearean, even to the point where it's on a stage of sorts. There's that kind of abandoned playhouse stage and so all of that felt very classical and very Shakespearean, whilst at the same time the colours, the pacing, and it all very much still represented Luhrmann's world. But I think at that point even he seems to agree that let's just let the text be what it is at this point in the film. I have to present it in a certain way that's it's the continuity of my imagery and the continuity of the story I'm telling, but let the standard text shine at this point. And so I think that when we do innovate, that we can still give over to old ideas, and we can still, like the project that you were just talking about, Adam, sometimes it is okay and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you do need to innovate, and so you need to challenge that. But I think it is okay still to maybe hold some things back and say, no, this is good as it is. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do agree though. It isn't always the way, because that can sometimes also be, that's not about recognising the value of something. That's sometimes about fear and unease, about changing as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you convinced
Yeah.
me. I was set that innovation had to be new constantly. Actually, you convinced me that there is space for the old as well.
Yeah.
And actually, no, this is too much of a stretch. I was going to say the innovation in some cases might be recognizing that we don't need to change everything. We don't have to throw the whole thing out. We just need to build on, tweak, and add to what's already there potentially.
But how would you say we can find new ways to express established ideas and key messages and objectives? Is there a way of looking at something and saying, okay, we've said it in this way for so long, we need to say it again, but we need to say it differently? Do you think there's a way of doing that?
There is certainly a way of doing it. I just don't think there's a mathematical answer to what that is. I think it changes depending on the message and the content. It's probably one of the great challenges of communication, I would say, is find new ways to repeat existing material or content.
Yeah.
And making it engaging, dynamic, so on and so forth.
For me, the scene in the balcony scene from the play, it's probably one of the most. It was probably one of the most recognisable moments in Shakespeare's entire catalogue of works. Right, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo, all that sort of stuff. That is something that, a rose by any other name would smoke. These are all very classic lines that we know, and we know the balcony scene. But in the film, I would argue Baz Luhrmann creates his own iconic balcony scene by abandoning all of the established motifs of the classical version, but yet it feels exactly the same, but it looks and sounds and you remember it, and it feels totally different. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I think quite often in films and in storytelling in general, you can use analogies, right? You can use an analogy to convey a point, convey a message. So as long as you're respecting the heart, the themes of a subject, you can actually twist and turn it in all sorts of different directions and have a similar impact. You've delivered it in a less direct way, maybe more abstract kind of way.
And so you said something. You said it about, I think you said it about understanding the heart or the core of your message. That's probably one of the easiest things to say and one of the hardest things to do.
But seems to me to be the study of great literature and language, is to remove the artifice of language and understand the kind of inherent structure and skeleton of the thing, which is an endeavor in itself. I always find that we're writing, or I'm writing something, and the language is kind of getting in the way. Actually, sometimes when I try and strip away the need for formality, when I go back to just talking out loud, I'm constantly talking to you about things, and I can say it verbally, but I can never put it on paper. And until I've talked through and kind of mashed around with saying things out loud to try and find the heart of what I'm actually trying to say, and then I'll find the right words for it. But I have to kind of begin in that play space first.
And that's probably one of the keys to innovation, isn't it? Is playing, is experimenting with things, right? I mean, you come from a world within Apple where I'm assuming that you were constantly encouraged to test the limits of things and test boundaries and lift up rocks and check behind the sofa and find what was down there, and then could you use it for anything? Is that, or was it much more stilted? I don't know. What was your experience like there?
No, just definitely the first. Definitely exploration, innovation. It's a great kind of Pixar and others, but a Pixar kind of philosophy of failing fast, right? Let's accept that you're likely to fail on any adventure. So let's fail as fast as we can, because it means we're learning something, we're making progress. There isn't failure, there is only lessons. So let's dive in, let's jump in, let's imagine we were kids again and have that kind of careless abandon that kids have it's okay to fall over because you get up and you go again and you learn something more each time. And that's definitely something at Apple. Virtually my entire time there was defined by experimentation and playing and seeing where we ended up. And there are things, there are projects that I kind of initiated that if we'd been strategic and thought about and kind of tried to map out, probably wouldn't have come to life. But because it was an open world for me to explore and prod and poke the corners of the way things were working, we suddenly made innovations. We invented things, designed products, systems, things that didn't exist. And you probably couldn't have imagined needing, until you'd done that kind of play. So I'm all about that. Lots of the signs and little pieces of artwork I've got littered around the studio are about failing fast and being comfortable with experimentation and playtime.
And that, I mean, because that's, I guess, failure is one of the scariest things, isn't it? If you're piling money into something, or you're piling time into something, or resources, you want it to succeed, right? Because you want it to say, well, that was worth it. That was a gamble that we took, and it was worth it. And you want to mitigate risk as much as you can. But I totally agree with you in the fact that, cinema, for example, any creative output, there's always risk. And it doesn't always pay off. Sometimes it tanks. Sometimes people just don't connect with an idea. And many a film that we consider a classic spent a lot of time just sitting on the bottom shelf somewhere with no one entertaining it. Fight Club, for example, was an absolute catastrophe at the box office, and it found its feet in a cult market on home release. There are other films where it just never lands full stop, and so risk, can sometimes take away a lot of people's appetites. But I also think that sometimes it's not always about the reward. Sometimes it's about the development, like you said. Sometimes it's about. It's not always got to be, we need to innovate because we need to succeed. Well, let's just innovate because something needs to be different. Something's not working. So let's move it bit by bit by bit. If you understand the core of what you're trying to achieve, I think you will succeed to an extent. And that balcony scene for me is a prime example of that, because that's probably one of the biggest risks of the whole film. If you get that scene wrong, no one cares. If you get that scene wrong, no one buys into the relationship. No one really is that bothered about the danger that the characters put themselves in after that point. And I would actually say that possibly in that swimming pool moment where, when they're they keep falling in the pool and climbing out the pool and under the water and things like that, he encapsulates the beauty of that relationship equally as well as what Shakespeare wrote. And I think that, to me, is a sign that it is worth taking those risks. The film was made on a $14 million budget, and every penny of that is on the screen. Every single penny of that is on the screen. And that film made over 151 million at the box office. So the profits on that are huge. The legacy of that is huge. It turned, Leonardo DiCaprio into a leading man for decades. It skyrocketed Claire Danes' career, and I think that was the first film she'd ever done, and turned Baz Luhrmann into a bankable filmmaker. And also for 20th Century Fox, right? And that's one of the things that, as a film nerd, that's one of the things I want to celebrate, is the fact that 20th Century Fox are a studio that take a lot of risks. A lot of the movies that they put out are independent projects in terms of they're not necessarily always part of a franchise, or that they're
Star Wars, mate. Star Wars, what a risk.
Yeah, I mean, you got Star Wars, you got the Aliens films, you got even lately The Shape of Water and films like that. These are they're one-off movies that they just output, and they, obviously they do create franchises. That's what every studio wants to do, but they're very different in terms of their approach to films that, say, like Warner Brothers are. Warner Brothers like established franchises that they build upon, or Universal, which is very much about genre movies, as it were, that they know is going to get a wider demographic of people. So it's, even for 20th Century Fox, it was a huge gamble, and I think it paid.
I'm slightly repeating myself, but I think it's that Ed Catmull, the founder of Pixar, is kind of famed for not discussing things in terms of success or failure, but in terms of what are we learning, and that to me is everything. If you approach work with that head on. Well, what are we learning today? What are we learning by doing this? There is no failure, right?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
There is a kind of mentality kind of required there to be open-minded enough, I guess, to let's learn. We're going to learn every single day, everything we do, every project, every piece, every gamble we take, if you like, creatively, we are going to learn. And that's a really, really exciting place to be.
And also, I think but saying something like that, saying that we're going to learn, implies that you don't know the answers as well. It's about accepting that you're part of a process, that you're not the end of that process, you're not the head of that process, and everyone working together, bouncing off each other, and having that confidence with each other, that trust with each other, to put an idea forward that you may 20 minutes later go, oh my goodness, like what the heck was I thinking? Like that was such a bad idea. And someone's going to back you down the minute you say it, but you've said it and it's out there and it's in the ether. And I think that helps build trust and bonds. Like we do it all the time, don't we? You know, I can't think of a single time on a set where you or I haven't recommended something to the other, and then we've kind of turned around and gone, I don't like that, that's not going to work. And then we've sort of gone, okay, fair enough, but we've done it. And I think that's why we have that trust with each other. And I think that's why people have that trust with us, because they understand the collaborative nature and the willingness to test things out and to fail. We have a series of videos. I know you've seen a few of them, Adam, and these Monday motivation videos that we put out each Monday. They're just sort of 60-second videos, food for thought type things. And the one that we released today, because we're recording this on Monday, is one about curiosity. And for me, that fed into this a little bit. It was inadvertent, but it fed into that. Is that idea that I think curiosity definitely drives innovation. If you want to think, I wonder if, or what happens if, or there's that if that feeds into things. But have you ever found yourself being driven by curiosity, and that has led you to something greater?
Yeah, I think part and parcel of every day, everything we do is led by curiosity, because it'd be too easy, particularly with the work I do, to have made video for the years I've made it, and sort of after the first one, figured you've got it nailed. I know how to open this editing software, and how to turn the camera on, record, edit, share the file. I'm done. It's that curiosity to first of all explore what you can see you don't know. I can see some things there that I don't know, and I can learn about that and dig in. And then to be curious about the things you don't even know you don't know. Like what is possible? What are the limits? I feel like if I was in a place without curiosity, if my life didn't have curiosity, it'd be a dull place to be. It'd be that kind of mechanical, robotic kind of existence, right? I think most of our frustrations with our own kind of creative output is we're already thinking of, well, what else could we have done? Where could we have taken it further? Where could we have made improvements here? And there's that curiosity to learn about the things that we know that we don't know enough about, we need to know more about, and to what do we not even know that we don't know yet.
Yeah. Because I think one of one of the phrases that I hate hearing the most, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But just because it works, it doesn't mean that it can't work better. and that's always my response when I hear that, you know. And if people had if people had carried that through, just because it works, it's fine, just leave it alone. You know, we would never have the developments that we have in society today, and businesses wouldn't run differently. And even now, right? Even now, in the middle of all this COVID lockdown, imagine if people said, right, well, we can't all get in a meeting room, we can't all spend 4 hours every morning talking about what we're going to do for the rest of the day, so we're all just going to sit there with our arms folded and wait for this to finish. No, people have adapted. They've said, okay, well, what if we do it this way? What if we do it that way? I'm going to put it out there, but I like watching wrestling, okay? It's one of my guilty pleasures, and I was listening to a podcast recently with this guy called Triple H, and he's one of the he's an ex-wrestler. Well, he still wrestles, but he's one of the chief overseers of the brand of WWE, and he said WrestleMania is the biggest wrestling event of the year. It's like their Super Bowl, it's their World Cup, and he said that every year, the week leading up to WrestleMania is the busiest busiest week of my life. I'm going here, I'm there, I'm getting changed into suits and getting out of a suit into jogging bottoms because I've got to go here and train, and then I've got to get in a tuxedo for this. And he said that he's found that all of the meetings that he normally does and has to be a part of, he's actually getting through them a lot quicker in this current circumstances. He said because everyone just jumps on a conference call, says their bit and gets on. He says you've not got to wait around for people, you've not got to set things up or deal with this. People don't hang around afterwards because they can't. They're hung up on, they're gone, right? And so he said that is leading him to feel that the way that they do business after this is going to change. And so that's almost an enforced innovation. But I think that the curiosity of, what are we going to do? How are we going to adapt to this? That people have experienced across the world, that is leading to things like that. So sometimes we can almost stumble upon innovation.
You said something a minute ago that I just wanted to pick up on. You said about we're being forced to innovate and think differently because of COVID. And we said that 3 or 4 weeks ago, whenever we first did our first podcast, that the world was changing as a consequence. And we've been forced to have meetings in a different way, and sounds like an organisation, a huge organisation that WWE is, are going to potentially reimagine how they conduct themselves, at least internally, and how fortunate we are, I guess, that one, this is a forced social experiment, and I'm not saying we're fortunate for that. It's terrible circumstances, but it is a forced social experiment. But how fortunate we are that people have dreamt, have been curious, have innovated, and built an infrastructure that was ready for us. Now we need it. We've suddenly got the tools we need to communicate, from video chat and audio chat and different ways of collaborating. And it was there. We didn't have to kind of wait for it to be invented. It was there, sat in the wings, waiting. And lots of us have used it. Lots of us have relied on it, but not the kind of entire population. And I feel like most of the population now has engaged perhaps with some technology they'd never heard of even. And how lucky we are that innovation was done and people had pushed the boundaries of what was possible and had it ready for us when we actually most needed it.
So our key messaging of this podcast today is this: if you do nothing in the next 6 months, why? What is it that you're so comfortable with that you can just let everything carry on? Surely there's something in your organisation that can be challenged, developed, manoeuvred in a different way. Or maybe there's something that's missing that can be added. And it doesn't have to be a big, terrifying Romeo and Juliet screaming and shouting with Radiohead playing in the background version of that. It could just be something very minor. But change is good as long as it helps. And asking questions is the best way to decide what changes are needed. And so those are kind of some of my takeaways. Is there anything that you think that you'd like to add to that, Adam?
Did you write that down? That sounded too perfect and scripted to me.
Honestly, it's probably the only thing I've said that's not written down today. Which is the tragic part.
That was beautiful. It was a beautiful summary. Good job.
Thanks, love.
On the subject of innovation, you did start this podcast by saying we were going to innovate this week. I'm not yet sure in what way this is an innovative podcast. So
No.
Is there something that we're doing different?
Well, we don't have a guest for a start. We decided
That's true.
to not have a guest this week, and I think I set you a task, didn't I? As your friend and as somebody that likes to push you, I said to you, Adam, give me something this week that we've not had before. And what have you got for me?
Got something that is completely and utterly not related to business at all. I don't know if that disqualifies it for featuring in our business podcast. But it was too good an opportunity to turn down. I've done this before with my team a couple of times, and I don't think I've ever done it for you. I might have shown you a sneaky version of it at some point, but I love preparing little, what's the word? Movie quizzes, I guess, but sort of sound-based movie quizzes. So I've got a 10-question movie quiz for you, and listeners can play along if they want as well at home, of 10 little sound effects, pieces of dialogue, music perhaps, and I want you to tell me which film each one is from. I've rarely gone easy when I've done this for my team, and even less so for you because you're a fountain of knowledge with cinema. I expect you to get all of these effortlessly, even though some of them are like a second long or less than half a second long.
Brilliant.
I'm expecting big things of you, boy.
Oh, mate. Well, what I'm going to do after this, I'm going to get you to say the numbers 1 to 10, and then what will happen is, depending on how many of these I get right, I'll then check. When you said I've got 10 questions, I'll change that to the number that I got right, and then just put those ones in.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There you
Fantastic.
go.
Okay, go for it.
Right, should we go in?
Yeah, go on then.
Okay. I've stretched you, so like I said, I've been probably unfair in places with how short some of these are, and you've got an advantage as well that people who are listening and potentially playing along won't have. You know me and the kind of films that I've seen, so you know where things it's not likely to have been from.
So I've got 10 sound effects from Lord of the Rings, basically.
Right. We're also innovating new technology. So we haven't even tested this. This is a live testing of this bit of tech.
Nice.
So I'm going to attempt to play you these one at a time, and I'm going to keep track of how many you get right. So you ready for number 1?
Yeah, let me turn my go for it.
Let's see. Number 1.
Oh, I thought I had you there.
Oh my goodness. Play it again.
Another one of them.
Oh, I thought I had you there.
I'm going to go with, it sounds like gibberish. I'm going to go with Men in Black. Ah!
Scary feet, scary feet. Oh, the kid's awake. Okay, scary feet, scary feet, scary feet, scary feet, scary. Kids asleep. Twins in a bunk bed. Oh, I thought I had you there.
Monsters. Oh, brilliant, man. I honestly couldn't hear that at all. I'm gutted.
Because of my volume setting?
No, I've watched Monsters Inc. like 1,000 times with Dylan, and I can't say that I couldn't place that. So well done. That was a good start.
I'm happy with that already. 1. Right, number 2.
Hello? I couldn't hear it. It sounded like someone knocking.
When you say you couldn't hear it, do you mean it's too quiet?
It sounded like a voice that said hello and then a knock. Hello? Gosh. This is hard, man. This is a hard game. Just tell me that one. Hello? Hello? Yes?
I really hate that man.
Jurassic Park. Okay, none out of 2 so far.
Suck, man. I suck at this.
Right, number 3. This is a hard one.
Got the basic layout. Bookstore, cafe, almost everything else is here too.
And again?
Got the basic layout. Bookstore, cafe, almost everything else is here too.
You should get.
Can you give me a clue? Give me one clue.
I mean, if I give you the clue I want to give you is too much of a clue.
It sounds like Leonardo DiCaprio, but I know. Or is it? It is. Oh, it's Inception. Yes.
Got the basic layout. Bookstore, cafe, almost everything else is here too.
Who are the people?
Projections in my subconscious.
It's yours?
Yes. Remember, you are the dreamer. You build this world. I am the subject. My mind populates. You can literally talk to my subconscious. That's one of the ways we extract information from the subject.
Love that movie.
Nice one. Nice one.
Right.
Pleased with myself. Pleased with myself. I'd redeemed myself on that one.
There you go. Right, number 4. This is probably the hardest of all, I reckon.
As far
What? Goodness gracious. One more.
as far
I think the line is as far back as I can remember.
Oh, Goodfellas. Whoosh!
as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Good work.
Hey.
I'm impressed. Right, number 5.
I will be looking at 2 things. Your living environment.
Mrs. Doubtfire, baby. Woo!
As your court liaison, I will be looking at 2 things. Your living environment,
More like a habitat, really.
Great film.
and I will be coming by on Monday and Friday evenings to inspect it.
Well, I'll put on a chicken.
Hello, dear.
Right, number 6.
Hi.
Was that it?
That was it.
Hi.
This is supposed to be hard, man. I can't make it easy for you.
Oh, that sounds like nightmare fuel. I needed one more.
Hi.
Can I hear chains in the background? That's a toughie.
Yep.
I need a clue with that one. You shouldn't make them so
No,
hard.
but it's got to be a test. I can't just if I give
Yeah, he said there's a difference between a test and a fix.
you say that if I'd given you like double the length of the ribbons, you'd have got all of them. So,
Hire and a chain. Is it like a sci-fi or like a kind of paranormal film?
So, Oren, any more subordinates for me to kill?
Hi.
What's the thing it's saying at the beginning? Lauren.
Oren.
Oh.
Bill Bear.
Oh no. Yeah, that's okay. I see why you did that. Blimey, I didn't recognise that, man. That's. I mind you, I've only seen Kill Bill Volume 1 probably twice
Really?
in the whole time. Yeah.
All right.
Man, that is.
Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So Kill Bill Volume 1. That one was.
I'm not giving you the point though, because I had to give you the point. Right, number 7.
Go on.
Tell her.
The Truth. That's from Aladdin. Another Robin Williams film. Look at this. Double the Robin.
What? Tell her the truth.
No way! If Jasmine found out I was really some crummy street rat, she'd laugh at me.
A woman appreciates a man who can make her laugh.
Complete coincidence that Robin Williams did it twice, but he deserves.
Fun fact about Robin Williams: he's probably the biggest genius on the face of the earth
Oh
ever.
man, isn't he just? As you know, I've got pieces of art around the studio. I've got 5 or 6 kind of quotes, big, massive pieces of art designed, and one of them is Robin Williams, which is, "You're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it." And I just think that's an incredible quote.
That's it, man.
Right, number 8. Possibly the hardest of the lot, actually. You're going to hate me for this one.
Oh dear. I couldn't really hear it, but it sounded like somebody going like they were cold on ice or something. Can't make it out.
Is this my failing of technology that's causing this?
It's I when we put the podcast out, I will have got the sound effects off of you and put them in properly, so it'll just make it sound like I'm making excuses.
The air got to it.
The air got to it!
Castaway.
Yes, beautiful.
Castaway, man. Wilson! That film turned like 20, didn't it, recently?
Probably. Sounds about right, yeah. Right, number 9. 2 more to go. Number 9.
Shit. Not without incident.
It sounds like The Matrix, but I can't hear it. I can't hear it properly.
Always that excuse. I wish we'd done a tech.
I genuinely can't hear it properly. I don't know why. It sounded like a flat line and then a load of guns go. Oh, I know exactly what it is.
Go on.
I know exactly what it is. It's Equilibrium. Yes! Christian Bale before he became Batman.
Right. One more to go. And I really want to fix the audio so you can hear this and have a decent chance.
Are you not sharing it through Zoom? Are you?
I'm sharing.
Do you not know how?
It's going through loopback
Oh right, okay.
into Zoom.
It's weird, isn't it?
I think
We need to speak to these guys and say, why does loopback not work properly? What are we doing wrong?
I've turned it up so it might work. Right, last one, number 10. Ready?
Hey.
One more.
Hey.
So it sounds like a load of things crashing, and then 2 people saying hey to each other.
Yep.
Is that what that is? Yeah.
One of your favourite
Dunno.
films as well. I'm disappointed in this one.
One of my favourite films.
I
I'm gonna.
suggest so, yeah.
Can you tell me one of the actors?
No way can I tell you one of
That will give it away. Okay.
No way.
I can't place it, man. I'm going to be gutted.
Here we go.
Hey.
Hey.
So how you doing?
Fine.
How old are you?
Oh, I have a work permit. I have all the papers.
Oh, something like that.
You still don't get
I
it,
can't
do you?
hear it, man. I can't hear it. I can't hear it.
Oh, thank
Go on, what is it?
Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights. Oh, blimey, man. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it. Mind you, I haven't watched Boogie Nights in probably about 15 years. But still, I should have known that one. I'm embarrassed.
Maybe I'm wrong. It's not one of your favourite films.
I still remember the lyrics to Feel the Heat.
There you go.
There
5
you go.
out of 10. That's
man, that's embarrassing.
One of the hardest. Well, no, it's a very, very hard quiz, and there was virtually no sound for you.
Yeah.
Because of the wonders of technology. So you did pretty well, all things considered.
I'll still embarrass myself, man. So well done, Adam. I'm going to insert a clap noise for you here. There you go.
Do you know my favourite one of all the ones you got right, you got Mrs. Doubtfire instantly. You immediately knew that. And you knew Aladdin as well. You knew Aladdin, so there's something about Robin Williams that just works.
Yeah, man. Oh, man, that's the secret sauce. I can't believe I didn't get Castaway, though. I was gutted about that one. Gutted. I was impressed that I got Inception. Genuinely impressed I got that one. We'll make that another one. I'll do it to you next time. I'll just do like random sound effects from.
I was scared you were going to say that.
Peter Jackson movies, and you can just. Oh, that was the sound of the second orc in command.
I hope you're not going to sign off, by the way, without giving me a score for Romeo and Juliet, because I need that in the lead.
I'm not, of course. I'm going to give you a score. I'm gonna give it 4.5.
Again, 4.5. Okay.
I'm going to go 4.5. Yeah. I'm not going to go full 5 on this one, and the reason for that being is that it's not a perfect film, right? It's it's got its issues. It's not great throughout, but it is as close to what I would consider to be a perfect teen drama / piece of cinematic history that you can get.
On exactly the same level as Uncut Gems, or is it more like a 4.6 or 4.4 or?
No, I would put them on the same level. I'd say the same level of mastery, and like Uncut Gems had its weaknesses as well. But I think to me, I think this is probably Baz Luhrmann's best film. It's quite harsh. I mean, I was looking on Metacritic the other day, and some people were quite harsh with it. I mean, like the San Francisco Chronicle gave it 0, but Rolling Stone gave it 100. But then I guess that shows you your demographic. Like Rolling Stone magazine, it's exactly the right demographic for who this was aimed at. Sort of trendy MTV teens and that kind of early 20s demographic. So yeah, there you go. Watch it, enjoy it, and that's that.
Beautiful stuff.
Cool. So we shall see you next week with a guest next time. Right. Cool. Cheers, buddy. I'll speak to you later.
Till next time.
See you, man.